All right, good afternoon. Speaking to a high-level meeting on the Security Council on exclusion, inequality, and conflicts, the Secretary General first reminded all Council members that for the poorest and most vulnerable people, the COVID-19 pandemic has amplified misery and inequalities. Exclusion and inequalities of all kinds, he added, come with a devastating toll to security. The Secretary General said that as we face the highest number of violent conflicts since 1945, a dangerous sense of impunity is taking hold since the recent seizures of power by force, including military coups. Peace has never been more urgent, Mr. Guterres said, but humanitarian funding, assistance, and conflict management tools, the very kind that the UN provides around the world, are all under tremendous strain. In his remarks, he also outlined a roadmap to promote inclusion, built around 4 key pathways: people, prevention, gender, and institutions. In every society, diversity of culture, religion, and ethnicity should be valued as a powerful benefit rather than a threat. With full inclusion and equality, he concluded, peace is a job half done. And as you know, the meeting was held under the presidency of the president of Mexico, Andrés Manuel Obrador, which the Secretary General also met prior to the meeting. During their meeting, the Secretary General thanked Mexico for its support of the work of the organization, including as an elected member of the Security Council. The Secretary General and the President discussed the impact of economic inequality and corruption on development and peace, as well as the efforts to address climate change and the ongoing global economic recovery from COVID. Turning to Ethiopia, the Emergency Relief Coordinator, Martin Griffiths, wrapped up a 4-day visit to the country yesterday. He met with President Abiy Ahmed and the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Demeke Mekonnen. Mr. Griffiths also met with the African Union's High Representative for the Horn of Africa, the former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo. Mr. Griffiths also held talks with representatives of non-governmental organizations, UN agencies, donors, and member states. The Emergency Relief Coordinator also made a 1-day visit to Mekele, as you know. While in Ethiopia, Mr. Griffiths addressed challenges related to the suspension of the humanitarian air service flights, the availability of fuel, cash, and supplies, the bureaucratic impediments, including visas for humanitarian staff, and the treatment of humanitarian personnel. He stressed that we, along with our partners, will continue to work with the government of Ethiopia and with local and international partners to support millions of people in need of urgent humanitarian assistance across the country. The funding gap for the humanitarian response plan for Ethiopia in 2021 stands at more than $1.3 billion. And as you saw yesterday, the Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, told Security Council in the afternoon that there must be an immediate cessation of hostilities in Ethiopia. And we have been getting quite a few questions about about detained UN staff in Ethiopia, and I just got off the phone with our security colleagues, and I can tell you that the current numbers are that 16 national staff have been detained, while 6 have been released. We are, of course, actively working with the government of Ethiopia to secure their immediate release. Today, on Venezuela, today a 3-member panel of electoral experts began deploying in Venezuela. The panel, which had been announced here a few weeks ago, will undertake an independent technical assessment of the electoral system in the context of the November 21st regional and municipal elections, which will take place in Venezuela. The panel will remain in country until shortly after polling day. Panel members will meet with a wide range of political and civil society actors, as well as electoral and authorities and experts. This type of electoral assistance has been provided by the UN in the past to other countries upon their request. Unlike UN electoral observation missions, which requires a specific mandate by either the Security Council or the General Assembly, the panel of electoral experts do not issue evaluative public statements on the overall conduct of the electoral process or their results. The panel will, however, provide an internal report to the Secretary General with recommendations to strengthen future election processes. At the discretion of the Secretary General, recommendations formulated by the panel may be transmitted back to national authorities. Members of the panel of experts will have extensive electoral experience working for the United Nations in other contexts. On Niger, the Secretary General's special representative and head of the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel, Mohamed Anadif, expressed his solidarity with the families and the victims and the government and the people of Niger following the horrendous fire that took place in a school in Maradi, where more than 20 children died. UNICEF also expressed its sadness, noting it will continue to work with national authorities and partners across the country to ensure that children can attend school and learn in a safe environment. Our friends at the UN Refugee Agency are telling us that since Sunday night, at least 11,000 people have fled fighting in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo and sought refuge across the border into Uganda. This is the largest refugee influx of people in a single day in more than 1 year. The vast majority of those cross the border are women and children. Working in coordination with local authorities, UNHCR has already relocated about 500 asylum seekers to nearby Nyakabande Transit Center, which can accommodate up to 1,500 people. The agency is also concerned that local capacity and services may soon be overwhelmed, and they are requesting urgent resources to address the needs of the new arrivals. We have been asked about the situation along the along the Polish and Belarus border, and to give you a quick update on what various UN agencies are doing. UNHCR, along with the International Organization for Migration, today said they're alarmed by the latest reports from the Belarus-Poland border. The two agencies said that yesterday reports surfaced of a large group of migrants and refugees, among them women and children, on the Belarusian side of the border, moving towards the international border crossing with Poland, named Bruzgi. They allegedly settled in a makeshift camp in the vicinity of the border overnight. The two agencies have been in contact with both governments in Warsaw and in Minsk and are calling for an urgent resolution of the situation and immediate and unhindered access to the group of people seeking help. With several tragic deaths recorded in the border area in recent weeks, UNHCR and IOM remind states of their imperative to prevent further loss of life and ensure humane treatment of migrants and refugees as their highest priority. For its part, the UN Children's Fund said it's deeply concerned about the dire situation about asylum-seeking children in Europe and at its borders. UNICEF said the reports of children living in appalling conditions being pushed back or detained on the eastern borders of the European Union are shocking and a direct violation of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. In a few minutes, the 11th UN Woman Police Officer of the Year will be awarded to Superintendent Nangya Mala of Nepal. She currently serves with our peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Secretary General will address the ceremony by video message and will recall how Superintendent Mala helped establish and now leads the mission's Health and Environment Unit. This unit promotes the safety and welfare of our peacekeepers by mitigating the risks from COVID-19 and other threats. You can watch it on the web TV. Tomorrow there will be 11 o'clock, there will be a press briefing in this room sponsored by the Permanent Mission of Spain entitled Multilateralism Must Deliver, Club de Madrid's Contributions to the OCA. I learned a new acronym today. I have no clue what the OCA is. Speakers will be Danilo Turk, who you will recall was an Assistant Secretary General in the Department of Political Affairs, and more importantly, the former president of Slovenia. And he will be joined by Yves Leterme, a Belgian politician and a member of the Club de Madrid. It'll be both in person and hybrid. And I will stop talking. Sherwin.
Thanks. Are you able to flesh out a little bit more for us, the staff in Ethiopia that have been detained? The 6 you mentioned that have been released, is that from the 16 or are there still 16 detained? Which agencies are they from, and has the Ethiopian government given you any explanation?
Look, there has been, as far as I know, no explanation given to us by why these staff members are detained. There are 16 remaining in detention, and 6 have been released. So that's the breakdown. They come from various UN agencies. They're all national staff. It is imperative that they be released.
It seems that the
And
UN
we've also had the occasion of some staff members to visit some of the staff members in detention.
It seems that there is a pattern here where the UN is being targeted. There's been the expulsion of UN staff by Ethiopian authorities. Before, you've asked for proof. I don't believe you've received that proof. How frustrated is the Secretary General by these developments?
Well, I think the Secretary General is frustrated by the lack of our ability to help the millions of people that are in need, right? That's what it's about. It's about helping millions of people, notably in northern Ethiopia, but frankly throughout the country, that need life-saving help. We've not been able to get into Tigray the aid that we need, the fuel that we need, the cash that we need. So the frustration is about that, our inability really to help the people that so desperately need our help.
Which parties are proving to be the greatest impediment to that work?
There are impediments across the spectrum. Maggie.
Steph, has the Secretary General reached out to the Prime Minister or Foreign Minister directly about this? And can you tell us, there were some reports from the region that said it was staff plus dependents. So can you tell us, is it just staff? Is it dependents?
There are also, as we understand, a number of dependents that have been detained. The numbers I gave you right now that I've been given are for staff. There are all sorts of communications challenges. So we're trying to get the most detailed figures that we have.
SG?
The Secretary General has been on the phone with Prime Minister Abiy a number of times over the last in the recent past. Right now, as you know, Mr. Griffiths also met with delegations. Our staff on the ground is also working with the national authorities.
So what does this say in terms of timing? Mr. Griffiths just wrapped his trip yesterday, and then it seems the government has decided to detain UN staff today.
The detention have
failure?
the detention are not today. Some of them have been detained over the last few days. You have to ask those who are doing the detention about the timing.
But does this mean his trip was a failure? If the government is so displeased with the UN after his departure that they're rounding up their staff?
This is not a time-boxed issue. Our efforts are continue and will continue to try to get humanitarian aid in. Beitul, and then we'll go.
So can you just clarify how many UN staff? Is it 22 in total, and now 6 of them have been released, and there are 16 left?
Okay, what I have right now is that 16 are detained, okay, and 6 have been released.
So it was 22.
That's the number.
Oh, and sorry, Addis and elsewhere?
This is, as I understand it, only Addis. I mean, for these national staff.
There's reason to believe there might be staff in other parts of Ethiopia that have been detained. Is that correct?
I have no indication
Okay.
of that. Mr. Hanna.
There have been some reports from the region as well that this was part of a wider roundup of Tigrayans. In other words, it may not necessarily be aimed at the UN itself. Can you comment on that?
Well, I can't comment on why the government is doing this, right? What I can only comment on is that we have colleagues that are currently in detention that should not be in detention.
If I may just ask a follow-up, sorry. Sudan, is it true that the UN staff have been instructed not to interact with those claiming to be ministers installed by those presently controlling the country?
You know, whenever there is how should I put it, a change of leadership or partial change of leadership that is done through means outside of the democratic process. We will continue to engage as necessary for the furtherance of our mandate, which is the political mandate, and which is, of course, the humanitarian mandate. Engagement with certain government officials does not imply recognition, so to speak. As far as I understand, there's been no change in the head of state, but in terms of it's not a recognition in any way. It is just the fact that we have to engage with authorities in order to fulfill our mandate. And that's what Mr. Pertz and the UN team in Sudan is doing. Your mic, you need to get that red light on your microphone. It should be, there's a button on the microphone. There we go. You got it.
Okay. Last Sunday there were elections in Nicaragua and widespread criticism from all over the world. As far as I know, the Secretary General hasn't said anything about these elections. Any comment?
I would beg to differ. Though I think we've been very outspoken in the run-up to the elections, express our concern about the detention of political leaders, of civic leaders, of journalists. We've seen the results of the elections. We've taken note of the various views expressed by, and including the concerns by a number of member states and international stakeholders. For his part, the Secretary General remains deeply concerned about the arbitrary detention of a number of who were kind of candidates or pre-candidates, so to speak, social leaders, human rights defenders, business people, journalists, as I mentioned. And those detentions were done in conditions that do not meet the minimum international human rights norms and standards. The Secretary General urges the authorities in Nicaragua to release them immediately and to fully respect the country's international human rights obligations, including in relation to the right of freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. He encourages the government of Nicaragua to cooperate with international human rights mechanisms, including the Human Rights Council, and to grant access to the Office of the staff from the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights to Nicaragua so it can assist Nicaragua in complying with its international human rights commitments.
But on the elections?
Well, I mean, I think I've used a lot of words, and hopefully out of those words, you can see what the Secretary General's position is. As I said, we expressed our concern in the weeks prior to the elections as we saw people being detained, people who had intimated they were going to be candidates, business people, journalists, human rights defenders. And at this point, we continue to be very worried about the plight of those who remain detained. We were not involved in these elections, whether it's through observers or technical assistance or whatever. So it's not for us to give a stamp of approval, disapproval to the elections. I'm just commenting on the situation. Senora, and then I'll...
So following up on Nicaragua, yesterday Daniel Ortega gave a very strong and defiant speech calling the opposition members who are detained some of very bad words, and he was actually saying that the detention is because, according to him, there are spies to the United States and many other things that are not proven yet in court. What is the position of the Secretary General after listening to speeches like that from the President of Nicaragua, where he's not listening to what you just said, which is the concerns and the call to try to get them? And then is the Secretary General in touch with the government of Ortega? And we know that several countries have declined and rejected this election as legitimate. So, well,
as I said, it's not for us to say whether legitimate or not legitimate. We'll let member states express their own opinions. You know, I would just stress, just to pick out from what I said that we would encourage the government to allow staff from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to enter Nicaragua, to help Nicaragua abide and comply with its international commitments. The speech is the speech. Our concern continues to be with people whose rights of assembly, right of expression are not being respected.
But don't you, does the Secretary General think that this type of rhetoric and defiance definitely will show in the streets of Nicaragua and more prosecution and more persecution against those that are against him?
We have no crystal ball. We would like to see the situation in terms of human rights, in terms of these detentions, which do not mean the minimum human rights detention. We'd like to see those go the other way. Majid, and then Dulcie. Then we'll go to the screen.
I have two questions about the migrant crisis on the Belarus and Polish border. You mentioned that UNHCR asked for a resolution of the situation, but we all know that both Polish and Belarus government have opposite views of how this should be resolved. Does the United Nations have a view how this should be resolved, where the migrants should go? Is there any plan suggested by UNHCR with this?
Well, I mean, as I said, UNHCR and IOM are in touch with their counterparts in Minsk and in Warsaw. What we want to see is people who are on the move trying to seek a better life being treated with dignity, to have those who seek asylum have their rights as enshrined in the Refugee Convention respected, and we do not want to see men, women, and children used as pawns, as part of what could be differences on a different level.
And just on that, the spokesperson for the European Commission made statements that characterized the situation as Belarusian government using migrants as an attack, basically, on the European Union. How concerned are you that about this rhetoric? You know, when they talk about migrants as rockets and bullets from Belarus against European Union,
Well,
not living and breathing human beings.
I don't speak for the spokesperson for the European Union, but I can only repeat what I've just said to you, is that people should not be used as pawns, especially the most vulnerable. If there are political differences, they need to be resolved between countries or between groups of countries in a way that people's dignity is respected. I think none of us can help but be moved by the pictures that we've seen. Dulcie and then Mr. Avni.
Back to Ethiopia. I was curious, given the constraints of the UN traveling in Ethiopia, how Martin Griffiths was able to, what was it like for him to travel to Mekele and Addis?
Well, I mean, he traveled by plane. Obviously, they got all the necessary authorization from the federal government, from the local authorities, and we're very grateful that he was able to go to Mekele. He had some very, I mean, the fact that, you know, if you'll recall, the Secretary General spoke to Prime Minister Abiy, I think on Wednesday. Yeah, on Wednesday. Also to inform him that Martin Griffiths would go, to make sure the visit would be facilitated. It was. Mr. Griffiths was also able to go to Mekele to speak to the de facto authorities there. It's part of an ongoing discussions that we have, and whose sole aim is to ensure that the millions of people who need aid actually get it.
Right. So will that happen? I mean, because we only hear one side of the conversation. We don't hear what the Ethiopians are saying.
I mean, then you should ask them. But I'm saying we don't hold the levers here, right? There are authorities that need to work with us to ensure that we get the humanitarian access that we need. That is currently not happening.
So just technically, when you say detained, do you mean they've actually been put in prison? Or are they in jail? What does detained mean?
They are being held in facilities against their will. Whether you call them prison, jails, penitentiary, I don't know. But they're not being detained in their homes. Mr. Avni.
Is the Secretary General have any view on whether a wall will help the situation in the Polish border, as is suggested by some in Poland, and about the whole idea of walls in
So nice to
refugee
see you
problem.
again, Benny.
Yes, it is.
I know. Listen, every country has the right and, should we say, the responsibility to protect its borders. That does not mean that it absolves them of the rights and responsibility to observe international law, especially when it comes to refugees, and to treat people with respect and dignity. Let's go, Madam. I need your mic. I need your microphone. Well, you need your microphone.
Yes, hello. Just, I was late, sorry, and I don't know exactly. You said the detainees in Ethiopia were detained by the government, and
Yes, ma'am.
on what premises?
Well, that's not clear to us. We're just trying to get there. Let me go to the screen. Let me go to Rick and then James.
Thank you, Steph. Couple of questions on Ethiopia. Do we know whether the detained people working for the UN are Tigrayan, or do we know what their ethnicity is within Ethiopia's mix of ethnicities? That's one question. And my other question is, did Mr. Griffith's statement about his trip to Ethiopia there was a conspicuous omission of any reference to detained UN staffers. Did he know about this when he was there yesterday, or did he deliberately avoid raising the issue in his statement?
I don't have the information to answer your second question directly. On your first one, it's a valid question, but for us, these are United Nations staff members. They're Ethiopians. They are UN staff members, and we would like to see them released, regardless of whatever ethnicity is listed on their identity cards. James?
Hi, thanks, Stéphane. It's a question about the speech and meeting today involving the Mexican President Obrador. At the Security Council, the Mexican president said he was going to advance a plan in the General Assembly in the coming days for a wealth tax, a 4% tax on the world's 1,000 richest people, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, those types. Did the Secretary General discuss this plan with the Mexican president in their meeting today, and does he support it?
I'm not aware they discussed the plan. I'm not going to get into the details of global wealth tax. What we've always believed is that people should pay their fair share in taxes. Mr. Ali Iftikhar.
Thank you, Steph. Last week, there were reports that TPLF soldiers were marching towards Addis Ababa, and in response, the Ethiopian government asked residents to take up arms to defend the capital. What is UN information? Are they closing in on the capital? And if so, has the UN taken steps to protect its staff?
I have no information on military or activity. It is clear that the safety and well-being of all our staff in Ethiopia is being assessed on a daily basis. Okay, Maggie.
But,
oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Iftikhar. Go ahead.
No, I said, haven't you received any information whether they were marching towards the capital?
I've seen the press reports. I have no way to confirm that from here. One last question from the screen. I think Mr. Klein had a question a while back. I apologize for passing you over, Joe.
That's fine, thank you. Also, back to the remarks that the Secretary General made this morning to the Security Council. He talked extensively about upholding the rights of women, and he mentioned the strong position that the union's taken with the Taliban in making sure that the rights of women and girls are upheld there. But he also mentioned, and I quote, that in every society, diversity of culture, religion, and ethnicity should be viewed as a powerful benefit rather than a threat. So my question is, how does he reconcile that idea of recognizing the benefits of diversity of culture and religion with the fact that in quite a number of Islam countries, in particular, governed by Sharia law, women are not accorded the same rights as men?
I'm not sure I see the exact link between the two. But anyway, first of all, the issue of women not having the rights that they not only that are enshrined in international treaties and covenants is not, I would say, the specific preserve of certain countries which have that are a majority of one religion. This is something that we see at different levels across the board. The Secretary General will continue to advocate, as he has done, to ensure that women have the same rights and are not the victims of discrimination or violence or anything else the world over. And he raises this throughout he's been raising this throughout his tenure, and within his own specific purview, as you very well know, he has worked towards and got gender equality within the senior leadership at the UN.
Well, but has he taken it up specifically in discussions with the leaders of countries such as Saudi Arabia and other countries that lead specifically in those countries that do not accord the same rights to women because of what they claim to be the tenets of their religion or their culture?
Up, whether it's the Secretary General, his representatives, every UN agency is pushing for this in every country in the world, from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. How about that? Okay, Margaret.
Steph, you said yesterday that you were going to...
I've got a question.
Hold your horses, Michelle.
Michelle. Go ahead.
You said...
Go.
What?
Sorry, just...
You said yesterday, Mr. Griffiths, you were going to try and get him to brief
yes,
us. What's going on with that?
As soon as I have something to announce, I will.
Okay, and is there a reason the Secretary General hasn't picked up the phone today to call the Prime Minister when his 22
we are
of his
working
staff
through
are detained?
different escalation modes. Michelle Nichols at Reuters, it seems you have a question.
Thank you, Stéphane. Couple of quick questions on Ethiopia as well. Is the UN aware of any UN contractors being detained?
Seen some reports of UN contractors being detained, but I'm not, and I repeat, not in any position to confirm it. But it is information we are pursuing.
Okay, grateful if you could keep us updated on any confirmation of the number of contractors detained. And is the UN moving any staff out of Ethiopia?
I have nothing to share with you on that point at this very point.
And are any UN staff having trouble leaving or boarding planes at Addis Ababa Airport?
None, that has not been reported to me.
Okay, and then final one, can you just remind us again how many national and international staff you have in Ethiopia?
Yes, James. Hold on.
Thank you.
All right. The actual number of staff we have as of November 8th is 2,398 national staff, 1,077 international staff, and some 4,957 dependents.
Thank you. And really, this is properly last one. Is the UN considering moving any staff out of?
As I said, we monitor the situation on a more than a daily basis, and we will take whatever action we need to keep staff, national and international, safe. Ms. Falk.
Yes, thanks. Question into overdrive. Has there been any contact with those who remain detained?
Yes.
And is there
been some
contact? And I apologize if you answered this.
No, it's okay.
And is there any contact with those who have been released, and where are they?
I mean, if they've been released, I assume they went back to their homes. They've been released. We've been able to have some contact with some of the people who've been detained.
But they continue their work.
Yeah, I mean, they're
ones who are
released. Whether or
released.
not, I mean, you know, I don't.
It's a moving target.
Short answer is I don't know. Once
Okay.
they've been released, I mean, if I were released, I would want to take some time off. But I mean, the point is that they've been released.
Okay, thank you.
Right, great. Welcome to round two.
Not by my count.
Just to wrap Ethiopia, if the accusation from the Ethiopian authorities is that these staff have been meddling in the internal affairs of the country, what is your response?
I'm not going to go into hypotheticals. The point is that these staff have...
It's been an allegation made before.
I understand. I understand. These staff have been detained. As far as I know, we have not received... they've not been charged. We have not received any clear indication as to why they're being detained, so we would like them to be released.
One more question on coal.
Of course.
Today, South Africa's energy minister told a conference in Cape Town. In fact, he criticized what he called the global preoccupation with Africa having to move away from fossil fuels that are rich in, Africa that is rich in oil and gas resources, yet the continent is one of the least polluting. He said cutting financing for coal, oil, and even gas was a mistake, while arguing that Africa should not be coerced to take missteps. Given that the Secretary General has warned that fossil fuels are pushing humanity to the brink, I wonder how he views these sentiments.
We do believe they are pushing humanity to the brink. We also believe that we need to find a pathway to a just transition. It is important that, as we know, everyone has responsibility, but differentiated responsibilities. No country should be coerced. However, every country should understand that we are in this together, to put it bluntly, and it is important that everyone move together at the same time so we can keep that 1.5 degree goal alive. Okay. I wish I could tell you I'm going to... What? I have to go see my boss, and I'm already 20 minutes late, so whatever. With some luck, he'll fire me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.